join in, please. Accept her.
I think I
please
got
accept.
it.
How did you do it?
Good evening, all. I'm so sorry for the wait. Good evening. I'm not sure. Can everyone hear me and see me?
See you and hear you.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that everything was running smoothly. I also want to make sure that I can stream it through YouTube. I just want to say, for those who don't know me, my name is Mia Hanfield. I am a rising junior at Booker T. Washington Senior High School. That's about it. I organized this panel because I felt a need in the community, and I decided that this is the first thing. I want to give a special thank you to Senator Brannon, who jumped in at very last minute and said thank you in midst of an emergency. So thank you so much. And I'm just gonna make sure that I can stream.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
All right, cool.
No. Good evening to those who just joined. Can everybody see and hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm asking that everybody change their names. I see someone under V60 ThinQ5G, and I see, yes. So I'm asking you change your names to your first and last name. So, and I see someone under Joe. I'm not sure who that is. And I'm not sure who Vivian Marrero is. Is it possible that you guys can change your name, or if you tell me who you are, I'll change them for you? But I'm not sure who everyone is.
Okay, good.
Good evening, all who just joined. In a couple of minutes, we'll be getting ready to start. We're just making sure that everything can be streamed to YouTube, and then we'll get ready to start at 6:30. I'm asking that everyone mute themselves. I will go ahead and mute everyone. Yes. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
To vote in person at the polls. Or you could switch to voting by mail. There are a couple of good options to ballot.
Good evening, all. Good evening. In just a second, we'll get started. I'm having a few technical difficulties, but we'll start streaming on YouTube in just a minute and everything. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so, okay, I'm sorry. From YouTube, it's not allowing me to stream. So what I'll do is I will continue to talk and they will be able to hear you, but they won't be able to see you from YouTube. So give me just a second and I'll get that started.
Hi, Mia. My new roof is popping. Okay.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and get started in just a second. Okay, so good evening, all. My name is Mia Hanfield, and I am a current student at the Booker T. Washington Senior High School in Miami-Dade County. I am the organizer as well as the moderator for tonight's panel entitled Lift Every Voice. The killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and the loss of far too many Black lives to list have left our nation anguished and outraged. More than 1,000 people are killed by police every year here in America, and Black people are 3 times more likely than whites to be killed. In expressing my pain to my peers, I realize we all feel the same. We are all infuriated and hurt that the mistreatment of our lives seems inevitable if your skin looks like ours. Then the question of what's next was presented. We've tried being peaceful and we've tried fighting, but no matter what we do, we are still being killed. There is no peace in our living and no justice in being killed at the hands of racists. You see, when folk feel threatened or harassed on a daily basis, no matter how smart or upright a citizen they may be, like everything earned can be taken away. It's called disenfranchisement. But because life is sometimes seemingly free from those cues growing up, and we can't name it and then internalize it, its name is racism. Racial disparity is defined as distinguished in criminal justice system when the proportion of racial ethnic group within the control of the system is greater than the proportion of such groups in the general population. Going out or even sleeping in my own home, the thought that it could be me next, or my brother, or my father, or my sister, or even my mom, leaves me with a lasting burden of fear. It is seen in almost every aspect in our lives, and I can't breathe. To this student, it seems systematically built against people that look like me with different agencies. But I believe that we have the ability to change the inequalities we face, starting with the conversation. With that being said, I decided to hold a panel discussion where we can lift every voice with some of our leaders in the community. Tonight, we have leaders right here in our community before us, which we will introduce shortly. Before we get started, I just want to go over some housekeeping rules. I will ask the panel questions, and they will have a maximum of 3 minutes to respond. This is not a debate, but an open dialogue on our current issues of racial disparity and injustices on our people of color, and to be in a conversation about reform. So with that said, let's introduce our panel. Welcome to our panel and all who have tuned in. Thank you for your time as we support Lift Every Voice and Sing. So introducing our panel, we have 2 students from the Miami-Dade County Public School System, Coriana White and George Pickens the fourth. It's on you.
Oscar Brannon. Representative Chevron Jones will not be joining us this evening, but in his place, representing the political perspective on tonight's panel, we have Senator Oscar Brannon II. Oscar Brannon II is a Democratic politician who has served as a member of the Florida State Senate since 2011. He currently represents the 35th District, which includes Miami Gardens, Miramar, and surrounding areas in southern Broward and northern Miami-Dade County. Brannon previously served as a member of the Florida House of Representatives, representing the 103rd District from 2008 to 2011.
Daniela Pierre, representing the activism perspective. Ms. Daniela Pierre. Daniela Pierre is a Miami-based community activist, a leader in the social justice movement, and a mother. She is also a recognized for affordable housing and home ownership. Daniela is also the current president of the Miami-Dade College chapter of the Association of Florida Colleges and an executive committee member of the Miami-Dade branch of the NAACP. She holds a master's degree in human resources management from Florida International University, a graduate of the inaugural National Leadership Training Program of the NAACP, and is the recipient of many accolades for her contributions and service within society.
Larry Hanfield. On our panel today, representing the law perspective, we have Dr. Larry Hanfield. Attorney Larry Hanfield is a graduate of Bethune-Cookman University. He later received his doctorate degree in law from Howard University. He is a nationally known trial lawyer, having tried cases as far west as Denver, Colorado, and far north as Salem, Massachusetts, and in other parts of the nation. Among some of his accomplishments are the following. First Black person appointed by Governor Lawton Chiles to the statewide Sentencing Commission. His duties include set sentencing guidelines for crimes committed in the state of Florida. The first person to be appointed as the chairman of the City of Miami Police Oversight Panel, where he oversaw the civilian investigation of police misconduct. The first Black person to be appointed by Governor Charlie Crist and confirmed by the state Senate to the statewide Ethics Commission for the state of Florida. As a state commissioner, he sat as a 9-member tribunal hearing cases of misconduct involving elected and appointed state and local officials. First Black person to be appointed by Governor Lawton Chiles as a member of the Judicial Nominating Commission, where he also served as chairperson. Duties include interviewing, screening, and submitting the names of lawyers to be appointed judgeship for Miami-Dade County. Last but not least, Attorney Hanfield's motto is, "Service is the price we pay for the space we occupy on this earth."
Chief Delma Noel Pratt. Chief Delma Noel Pratt is an accomplished police executive with 27 years of sworn law enforcement experience. She began her career as a public service aide for the Miami Police Department in 1989. In 1993, she transitioned to the Miami-Dade Police Department, where she trained and graduated as a police officer. She moved up through the ranks, and in February of 2013, she was appointed to division chief. She has directed and coordinated numerous multi-agency and entity operations, focusing on violent Part 1 crime reductions. On May 1st, 2017, Chief Noel Pratt was sworn in as the first female police chief for the City of Miami Gardens Police Department. Her vision includes working in partnership with citizens in various community and civic organizations to reduce crime and increase quality of life within the city, as well as equipping personnel with the tools needed to stay safe and properly service the community effectively and efficiently. Her educational background consists of an Associate of Arts degree from Miami-Dade County Community College, Bachelor of Science degree, and Legal Assistant certificate from Barry University, as well as a Master of Science degree from Lynn University. She attended the Broward Sheriff's Office Executive Leadership Program, and she is a graduate of the Federal Bureau of Investigation National Academy. She has received numerous awards and is a member of the Progressive Officers Club, National Organization of Black Law Executives, FBI National Academy alumni, and the Miami-Dade County Association of Chiefs of Police, where she currently serves on the board.
Dr. Steve Gallo III. Dr. Steve Gallo III, the elected District 1 school board member and vice chair for Miami-Dade County Schools, is a lifelong educator who started his career as a classroom teacher. He has taught at the elementary, middle, and senior high school levels. He then rose through the ranks as a professional educator and over the next 25 years distinguished himself in the field of education, specifically in the area of supporting improved teaching, learning, and leadership in urban educational settings. Dr. Gallon was the recipient of the NAACP Mary McLeod Bethune Educators Award. On August 9, 2017, Dr. Steve Gallon III was named recipient of the National School Boards Association Council of Urban Boards of Education, CUBE, prestigious 2017 Benjamin Elijah Mays Lifetime Achievement Award. In March 2019, he was voted vice chair to the National School Boards Association Council of Urban Boards of Education's steering committee. In May 2019, he was elected vice chair to the Census 2020 Task Force, and his most recent accomplishment was in September. He was elected as the 2019 honoree for education by the NAACP Miami-Dade chapter. On April 3rd, 2020, he was unanimously re-elected as the vice chair of the Council of Urban Boards of Education National Steering Committee.
Thank you to our amazing introduction of hosts. Those are actually very prominent students within the Miami-Dade County Public School system. And before I get started, I don't know about anybody else, but I believe in a man named Jesus. So I'm gonna ask that my pastor, Pastor Donald Burden of Miami Bethany Seventh-day Adventist Church, come and offer a word of prayer.
Let's bow our heads. Father and our God, we thank you, first of all, for the breath of life, allowing us to be in the land of the living. We pray that our response will not be silent, but an intentional response. Be with our elected officials, that they will use their voices and their place at the table to sound the clarion call for change. Give each of them insight. Be with our time together on this panel, that it will be meaningful. We ask this in Jesus' name. We do pray. Amen and amen.
Amen, amen. So getting started, first of all, I'd like to welcome and thank all of the panel guests and everyone who came on, and we're gonna get this thing started.
Don't put your hands in your pockets. Don't put your hoodie on. Don't be outside with no shirt on. Shake the hand with people. Don't matter, even if you're down the street. Don't be out too late. Don't touch anything you're not buying. Never leave the store without a receipt or a bag, even if it's just a pack of gum. Never make it look like there's an altercation between you and someone else. Never leave the house without your ID. Don't drive with a white beater on. Don't drive with a do-rag on. Don't go out in public with neither. Don't ride with the music too loud. Don't stare at a Caucasian woman. If a cop stops you randomly and start questioning you, don't talk back. Just compromise. If you ever get pulled over, hands on the dashboard, and ask, could you get out your license or registration?
So that was a video of a young Black man in my generation talking about the unwritten rules of being a Black man or being a Black person. So getting started with the first question, are all the panel guests ready?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so in an article written by Lynn Peoples and published by Nature, it is stated that about 1,000 citizens are killed annually by law enforcement in the United States. On estimate, Black men are 2.5 times more likely than white men to be killed by law enforcement in their lifetime. And Black people fatally shot by police are twice as likely as white people to be unarmed. After implicating trainings, police precincts, and academies nationally, the statistics have not decreased. What can be done to hire and train officers to avoid racial biases?
You want us to jump in?
Yes, sir.
First of all, Mia, I want to commend you and your cohorts for such a professional, deliberate panel this evening. I'm so honored to be joined with some esteemed colleagues and friends and community fighters on this panel this evening. I think this is a very relevant topic, and as a lifelong educator, I'm always excited to hear what our youth think and to have our youth lead this discussion. There are a myriad of things that can be done, but what we're doing in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and actually one of the things that I've advocated for, was to provide for implicit bias training. Bias is a natural inclination. Each and every one of us has our own biases. Those biases that are racially related are very often implicit, meaning they're not explicit, people don't convey them openly, but they hold them and they make determinations as it relates to their interactions based on their predispositions about a hoodie, about a pair of sneakers, about loud music, and at the end of the day, about the color of one's skin. We recently addressed this, and I addressed it very openly as the school board member for Miami-Dade County Public Schools when we got a set of data that came back to show that the student arrest data that we had reflected over 50% of the students that were arrested were Black, yet we only represented 25% of the student population. So that disparity was very conspicuous, it was very, very clear, it was very, very glaring, and it was unavoidable to conclude that it had a lot to do with determinations being made based on students being Black versus what the actual violation has been. So we wanted to lean very openly into this discussion to deal with the issue of us criminalizing school-related issues with Black students more than other groups of students. And again, training is something that's critically important, implicit bias training more specifically to deal with this. The second iteration is to hire people who have some community relationships and or a willingness to develop those relationships. Everybody's not going to be from the community, but to the extent that we can develop a pathway and a pipeline for individuals who are seeking to become law enforcement officers, seeking to become teachers, seeking to become educators in respective places who are from the community, they can have a better perspective and more sensitivity towards the individuals in that community they work with. So those are some things that we can do relative to avoiding racial biases.
I think Dr. Gallen just hit on a lot of vital points within our community. And I'm gonna ask to pass the mic. Do any of the other panel guests have an answer to the question being presented?
Oh,
Yes, me. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, Chief. I'll let you have the next word, Chief.
Yes, some of the things that we do for the City of Miami Gardens Police Department is we do an extensive background check, talking to their neighbors, talking to their past employers, and also looking at their social media outlets, seeing who they're associated with. That's just some of the things that we do. Sometimes you can tell during the preliminary background checks what type of individual that you're dealing with. The other thing, like Dr. Gallen was talking about, we have trained everybody on the implicit bias training. We're ready to do our second background or second round of implicit bias training. I think it's also important for us to go ahead and be intentional and make sure that we expose all of our personnel to different cultures, different role-playing type of training in order to get them comfortable, if that's the correct word, comfortable with the environment that they're going to be servicing. In addition, in order to be intentional, we have made sure that we reached out to individuals within our own community who would like to be a part of our police department. And with that, because we've done that, we've created a more diverse police department. We're over 50% African American. So I think it's just some of the things that we're putting in place that has allowed us to be a little bit more intentional in these areas of concern.
Great answer. I think Attorney Hanfield was going to say something.
Yes, thank you. I think the biggest problem is we have to come to the realization that racism and the systemic problem of racism, which has reared its ugly face finally in the white community. The Black community has always lived by it. We understood it. A couple of things. One is I think that on the level of increasing, holding police officers more responsible, the bottom line is that we can do all the training that we can come up with, but until white folks, when I mean police officers, see the value of a Black person as the same value of a life of a white person, we will continue, unfortunately, to have these problems. There's a dangerous combination when you have fear and racism. Racism is in the heart. You can implement legislation to put people in check and hold them accountable, but racism is in the heart. I think a couple of suggestions. There's no perfect solution because we're dealing with a very, very dangerous problem that we're not going to eradicate overnight. And we're definitely not going to do it just having conversation among those who know the problem exists. Police officers. I believe that you're going to have to start doing like the federal government has done. Some other agencies have done. Miami Beach, for an example, in order to become a police officer, you have to have a college degree. And why I think that is a problem, because you're going to have to do and law enforcement a better job in hiring individuals, which means if you establish more of a profession to be treated as professionals and to have the expectations, that means you're going to have to pay them more, but college degree. Why is that important? I think that it at least will raise the level of expectations. A second is that police officers cannot be afraid of the community that they are charged with protecting. I always say, and this is true, we have a different concept in law enforcement. White folks get protect and serve, Black folks get law and order. And until we change that where Black folks get the same benefit of protect and serve and not law and order, we're going to continue to have the problems that we're going to have. We're going to be having this conversation next year and the following year until we really do a transformation in training, starting with education, because if they are given a badge and a gun and they are afraid. I've been on a lot of panels, and one of the things that police officers don't like to hear is that when they see me not knowing who I am, but see the color of my skin, I'm the boogie bear. They're afraid. And fear causes you to do things that you otherwise wouldn't do. And so therefore, it's a deep-rooted problem. And until we can get white police officers to see the same value in the face of a Black person, whether it's a Black female or Black male, as the same value they see when they're looking at a white person, we're going to have that problem. And let me give you a perfect example, and I'll shut up. Emmanuel 9, the shooter, white suspect, after killing 9 people with a firearm, deadly weapon, you know what happened with him? They handcuffed him. They took him to McDonald's before they booked him. In New York, we saw the suspect, white suspect again, a terrorist suspect. The police officer catch him, surround him. They place handcuffs on him, no problem. So the problem is that they act, Black folks don't get the same treatment. We get law and order, Black folks don't get protect and serve. And until we can change that mental concept, we will always have a problem. Thank you.
So a lot of you actually hit on a lot of points that are in previous and future questions. I'm sorry, and I really appreciate that because so this is a video that I will play that, and this incident did happen in Miami.
After an internal investigation led by 4 senior officers, ruled the shooting was unjustified. Goyos appealed the chief's decision through a process common to police departments nationwide known as arbitration. Less than 2 years later, the sole arbitrator overturned his termination, ordering the chief to bring Goyos back on force. Across the country, officers fired for misconduct are being rehired despite the objections of those running the departments. The Washington Post surveyed the nation's 55 largest police departments and found that of the 37 departments that provided data, at least 33 of them were forced to rehire fired officers. More than 1,800 officers were terminated for misconduct. Shooting, Goyos maintains he thought it was on. This is his account of what happened.
As soon as I saw me with a firearm and I was in fear for my life, I took my target and I killed 3 shots and said, right back to back.
Just come on this one.
So I was informed that the sound of the video was low, but I will sum it up. Basically, it was a case in Miami in which an officer shot two unarmed Black men that were in a car in Little Haiti. And it showed different facts about how if you live in these impoverished areas, you're more likely to be killed, as the statistics lastly showed in the previous slide. So my questions to the panelists today are, the officer that shot the two Black males was fired because investigation showed that he was guilty, but was rehired after evidence showed that he was still guilty and wrongfully shot these two Black males. So my question for the panelists today is, in nearly 2 decades with the Minneapolis Police Department, Derek Chauvin faced at least 17 race-related misconduct complaints, none which derailed his career as an officer. Even as outrage has mounted over deaths at the hands of the police, studies show it remains notoriously difficult in the United States to hold officers accountable, in part because of the political clout of police unions, the reluctance of investigators, prosecutors, and juries to second-guess an officer's split-second decision, and the wide latitude the laws give police officers to use force. How many race-related instances are necessary to hold an officer accountable, and who delegates that judgment?
Well,
Go ahead.
well, I can tell you that's one of the things that's being debated right now, because the way the law is presently, there's no shield from you let a police officer terminate the police officer, he goes to another state or another jurisdiction. One of the issues that the legislature is trying to pass, and that is on a national level, to make sure that those things don't happen. But it is the Officers' Bill of Rights, the way the law is presently, for an example, not in Georgia, but in Florida. In Florida, it's still on the books. Most of the prosecutors' hands are very tied. Police officers are legally able to shoot someone who they believe is may have been involved in a felony, as they are fleeing the felony, shoot them in the back and kill them. And in Florida, you could not prosecute that officer, as unconscionable that may be. That's what happened in Georgia. Georgia law is different. So every state has its own laws. There's no uniformity as relates to that. But the problem is that police, the way we have to change the laws if we're going to make a difference. Right now, if you let an officer go based upon bad conduct, even though the conduct may not give rise to criminal prosecution, there's nothing that prevent that same officer from going to Georgia, going to another agency right within Florida, and still being hired. So those are laws that have to be created to address those issues.
One of the things
I wanted to speak. Do you mind speaking?
Go ahead, Senator.
So there's something that's the undertone of what we're even talking about is political will. And that's the political will, whether it be the political will to stand up to the powerful police union to change these laws, or whether it be the political will to decide to do things that may not be seen as popular, right? So we talked about the Police Bill of Rights and the way it's set up in Florida, right? So will the state change that, and will the people that you elect decide to change that? We also talk about elected officials and the negotiations that our local elected officials do with the police unions that give them the power to do or give them in their contract the ability to override a firing, or to have this amount of input and when it comes to firing someone, or how many incidents it takes. So I think that the main thing that we need to do when dealing with these two things is political will from our politicians to do those things that we believe should change. And up until this point, many of our politicians haven't had the political moxie to do just that. So I think that hopefully is a change that's coming from what's happening right now. But again, it's our biggest issue right now, our biggest hurdle, I think, to climb.
One of the things, echoing what our senator said, Mia, you described the judicial system, we described the political system, we described the overall system of government. One of the things that this nation most recently has been able to really confront and articulate, and Attorney Hanfield and many of us who have been around for a while can go all the way back to Arthur McDuffie back in the 80s. And I mean, we just have so many narratives that this is not a new narrative, this is not a new experience. But what the new experience reflects currently is a collective will, a collective sense of engagement, a collective sense of anger and anxiety around this issue. But what I wanted to say is that as we describe these various systems of government, systems of politics, systems of judicial operations, these are systems that we've been very candid about that operate under systemic racism. So because many of these systems have racist proclivities, racist tenets, racism does not provide equal justice under the law. And they provide a mechanism by which Arthur McDuffie, those individuals involved in that issue can become acquitted. You can catch the officers beating Rodney King within an inch of his life on video camera before we had cell phones, and they can get acquitted because these officers, to the point that Attorney Hanfield made, they were not being held accountable because our systems that are designed to hold people accountable have elements of systemic racism. And again, the value of a Black life is not as weighted heavily as it is for other lives. But right now we see a sea of change, and the way that change will happen, as Senator Brandon said, talking about the moxie that we're looking for, that moxie is going to come from young people, and by us getting out and voting, and having people who have the will, the skill, and the courage to challenge the system of racism, and quite frankly, not only challenge it, but change it.
I agree.
So you guys are constantly hitting on points that I'm going to get to. But the next question is, how can laws be put in place to prevent the rehiring of an officer to a different precinct after they have been dismissed in lieu of a misconduct? So I believe it was Dr. Gallen, I'm not sure who mentioned, or Attorney Hanfield that mentioned that you can get fired in Florida and get hired in Georgia. And we kind of hit on the points, but what are the specific laws that can be put in place to prevent this rehiring? Because officers that killed the Black man here are going to the next place so they could kill the next Black man. So how can we prevent that? How can we stop that? And what laws can be put in place specifically to put a stop to that?
Very easy, very easy. Vote, vote, vote. All the protests that's going on, we need it. Peaceful protest, because what it does, it gives fuel to the engine to bring about change. But change does not happen like a microwave quick fix. It is a result of pressure being put on a pot. And because of the pressure, something has to give. So to answer your question very specific, on a national level, this is what the Democrats presently in the House passed. But if I'm going to be very straight honest with you, it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate in 2020. The only way something will happen is if the Republican-controlled Senate in this year's election become next year controlled by the Democrats. Because the reality of it is those laws have to be set on a national level. Let's deal with the state level. Senator Brannon knows, as a state senator, unfortunately, I'm born and raised here, so I remember when the legislature in Florida was Democratic majority. That hasn't been the case in years. That's why when Willie Logan, who would have become the first Black Speaker of the House, that never happened because Democrats were in the minority. So in Tallahassee for the last, 15, 20 years has been Republican control. And so why is that important? Legislation get changed when you have the votes. If you are outnumbered you're not going to bring about the necessary change. So vote, vote, vote. We celebrate when we talk about getting a record number, 60% of those who can vote to vote in the Black community. Considering how it affects us, not only it affects our pockets, but now we realize that it actually affects our lives. There's no reason why we should not be having 95% Black participation. We were beaten, whipped, died, killed, executed, everything for the right to vote, and we still don't take advantage of it. But if you're going to bring about a change, the only thing politicians fear is the ability to lose their vote. When you vote for them or don't vote for them, that's the change, that's the fear, that's the only thing that they recognize. And that's why monies that go into their campaign, they answer to the big money. But we have devalued our vote. We have the opportunity and the right to bring about any change we want if we come together and vote. It's just simple as that. So to answer your question, how do you change those laws? Those laws don't mean anything until it's changed in Tallahassee. Chief Pratt can do all she can do. She only can control her force in Miami Gardens. But if you're going to bring about a change that's going to have an effect statewide, there's only two ways that's going to happen, either on the state level in Tallahassee or on the national level. And if they pass it on the national level, the importance would be police officers would not get the necessary funding from the federal government unless they are in compliance with certain standards that are created that become laws. So it all boils down to one thing, the power of voting.
So I think the law that he's talking about is a national database of police that have had this misconduct. And it's something that's been proposed at the national level. And it's what we're trying to get. It's one of the many reforms that we've been talking about. But like Attorney Hanfield said, that change won't happen unless we get some change in the legislative bodies, and that won't happen without the vote.
Wow, that was powerful. And I see in the comments that everyone is agreeing with you. And someone said, everything here being illustrated, go out and vote, get everyone you know of voting age to go out and vote. So I am actually going to skip a few slides because I do have something on voting, and I am going to go ahead and ask the question first. I'm sorry. So studies show that 18 to 30-year-olds, especially in the Black community, do not base their lack of faith in do not have faith in the repeatedly failing justice system. How do you encourage the youth of today to get out and vote? And I think that specifically targets mostly Senator Brannon because he is an elected official. So how do you encourage people in my generation to go out and vote?
Look, I think I would hope that the things that we're seeing right now are the things that would motivate you to go out and vote. The narrative right now, whether it be COVID or whether it be police, the change that we want to see in the police, many of these things are affecting this community, right? Many times when we talk about stuff that in the past that we've talked about, it sounds like some sort of civil rights movement, right? It sounds like something your parents or your grandparents were involved in. This movement that we're talking about right now, this is not my movement. This is not Larry's Attorney Hanfield's movement, even though we all want to be a part of it. The people out there marching right now are the 18 to 30-year-olds, right? And I believe that what's going on right now, the next step is voting. And I think the way that we get them to do that is it's our generation's job to say, you know what, we're proud of you out here marching. We're proud of your social media activism. But the next step to see the change that you want is voting. Because if you have old people in there, if you have people that don't agree with you or don't agree with any of the things that you're talking about, and look, I see them all the time. It's one thing to be, in a city council, like a city council in Miami Gardens, where it's a bunch of people that look like us and they're voting mostly the same way. I deal with people from Lake County, and in Lake County, the Klan is still active. And the representative from there has no qualms about saying he will take an AK-47 and he will shoot anybody that protests, whether it be peacefully or not. He has no qualms about wearing blackface and is proud of it and gets votes because of it. And so we have to put people in office, and we have to change the entire narrative. And our job in this generation, is Generation X and our baby boomers, is to let the 18 to 30-year-olds understand that there is a connection between the things you see not happening and the lack of voting.
Exactly. And the bottom line is, the question you say, how can we encourage people, the young folks that's out there, how can we encourage them to vote? Lord, if what's going on now is not encouragement, showing the necessity of why their vote don't matter, God help us, because I don't know what else it's going to take. Because what happened to George Floyd before the public eyes, that could happen to any one of us. None of us are too old, and none of us are too young to be in that same situation. So a lot of us know that, but now even white folks, even the folks in other countries realize what's going on. But it doesn't matter. The protest doesn't matter if you don't take it to the next level. What goes with protest is to bring about a change. You are upset about your present circumstances. So what are we going to do about it? You protest, you peacefully protest, and then what you do, you transfer that to what? A change. The change is voting. Protest, vote. If you don't vote as a result of the protest, your protest means nothing. Absolute nothing. So if everyone out there, go to the polls. We have an election coming in 2 months, August 18th, and then in November. If just one person take 10 other or 5 other, we can change everything that we have discontent about. The power is in us. We have the power. So this new generation, and Oscar Brainer, Dr. Steve Gallen, all of us know that the worst level, and white folks know, because they teach, records are kept on who voted, who don't vote. Do you know the worst participation in history of voting, even today, has been the younger generation? That's the worst, because it has a record of not being reliable. So what you have to do is change the narrative. You change it, you're frustrated, you're protesting, now you take that anger to the poll, and you will see the change. You will see the respect that you will get. We got the power. We got to just learn how to utilize that power.
And one of the things that Attorney Hanfield said, and I know you mentioned that Senator Brainen was the elected official. I'm very proud to also be the other elected official on the panel. And I'm very, very proud that, as Attorney Hanfield said, we have an election coming up in 2 months that God and the people have blessed me to have been reelected unopposed. But I will say, with the support of people like Attorney Hanfield at the onset in 2016, he's absolutely correct. I was elected because there were people who took your vote for granted. One of the things that I had coming as a high school principal and an educator, I knew the power of young people. So what we have to do to get the youth and encourage you to vote, we have to give you something to vote for. And we have to have some relationships. We have to make the process relevant to you. And again, we have to have that connection. We always talk about the Obama effect. Obama gave people not anything to vote against, they voted for him because he spoke to all people. And what you see in your generation and what we see that is going to change this nation, the change for Black folk is not going to come squarely from Black folk. The change during the Civil Rights Movement, although we see Martin Luther King and all of those Black folk marching, there were white folk marching with them too. So what we see right now is a sea of change that involves all people from different walks of life. And that is the beauty that you all have as young people, because you have ways to communicate. You have ways to relate with each other. From social media to the digital divide, you have that power. But Attorney Hanfield is absolutely correct. The data points have people taking you for granted. And that is one of the things that I didn't do in 2016. young people were the secret weapon for me. I had the seniors, I had the people at my age group, but I had my children's peers, and you all came out. So you have to understand the power that you have, and you have to, as he mentioned, you have to run it through the tape. Protesting is a sprint. You understand track? Protesting is a sprint. To make real change, to make real systemic change, you got to be able to run a marathon. You got to run it through the tape. So right now, we've not seen an opportunity as we see right now in nearly 30, 40 years. I would think Senator Brandon, Chief Pratt, Hanfield, I don't think we've seen that since like the 60s maybe. What we have right now, collective energy of people from all races, backgrounds, and walks of life. But you young people have to run it through the tape, and that's to the vote.
So with all of that being said, I'm going to call on Kenya Hanfield, who is now the head ambassador for the program Vote the Future, encouraging young people and all people to get out and vote. So Kenya, the mic is yours.
Thank you. I'm going ahead and share the screen. Mentally raise your hand if between the ages of 16 and 26, you knew, understood, and honestly wanted to participate in political and civil affairs. According to stats, not too many of us at that age or ever are truly interested in governmental affairs. Did you know that in 2012 elections, on the 2012 elections, Blacks, Browns, and Hispanics made up less than 25% of the presidential ballot? Good evening. My name is Kenya, and I wasn't interested either up until middle school when something happened to a former classmate of mine. I didn't realize that it wasn't because she was troubled, as they labeled her, but because her voice wasn't heard that she was failed. I had served on multiple organizations such as the Miami-Dade Youth Commission, Student Government Association, Miami-Bethany Youth Team, and a new endeavor entitled Vote the Future, to forge a better future that benefits our youth while creating a better socioeconomic environment for all. Vote the Future was created to engage and encourage the youth of Miami-Dade County to pre-register, register, and re-register to vote in order to increase active participation and change in our communities. In Miami-Dade County, Blacks had the lowest ballot turnout as of June 2020, with less than 2,500,000 voters. When it comes to youth and young adults, many of us feel that it isn't necessary to participate in civil matters until we are directly motivated or affected by some circumstance or unfortunate event. In 2018, after the Parkland shooting, youth political engagement engaged midterm elections jumped to 31%, the highest seen since 1982. Our mission at VTF is not only to gain voters registration, but to decrease the overall age and race gap when it comes to voting. By joining us, you'll gain a lot of information about ballots, upcoming elections, how to create fun and interesting atmospheres when it comes to civic engagement for all ages, and tips when it comes to voicing your concerns in your communities. As of yesterday, June 30th, over 6,000 people were reached on social media platforms, and over 120 enthusiastic and influential interns from ages 15 to 30 were employed to help increase voting turnout among their peers. With innovative social media techniques on multiple platforms, coupled with young and willing influencers, we will help engage and influence a change to better our community standing for all ages. At Vote the Future, we believe that our votes today will change tomorrow's world, and it starts on August 18th with Miami local elections. We are the Society of Voters, and we control our future. On the screen, you will see our multiple social media platforms, as well as our website, votethefutureproject.org. We're available on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And to vote, you can text 786-741-8683 to send in your voter's registration with any of our interns that are on this call, their first and last name. You can also follow us, check the website for any updates, and use the website listed below, register to vote, florida.gov, to register online and get information about absentee ballots. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenya. And with that being said, everyone on here, please make sure you are registered, re-registered, and pre-registered to vote. As young as 16, you can go out and pre-register to vote. I know I'm pre-registered, and I know that the moment I turn 18, I will be out there voting. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get to our next question. So research done by the Cambridge Center for Evidence based on policing reveals that officers fired for misconduct are often rehired. The police officer in Cleveland, Ohio, who fatally shot 12-year-old Tamir Rice in 2014, had previously resigned from another police department after it had been deemed him unfit to serve. The Cleveland police did not review the officer's personnel file before hiring him. The New York Times reported in 2015. An investigation of public records from Florida showed that 3% of the state's police force had been previously fired or had resigned in lieu of being dismissed. This study, published in May, found that these officers tended to move to smaller agencies which served a slightly larger proportion of Black residents, but with no significant differences in crime rates. They also appear to be more likely to commit misconduct in the future compared to officers who have never been fired. How is this background of officers transferring from one precinct to another thoroughly reviewed? And I know that Chief Pratt mentioned that they go and ask neighbors, they research social media, but I just want to go into further depth of that. How do we know? I know we can never know if you're racist, but how can we review that? How can we make sure to protect our own communities that have people that look like you and I? How do we protect our communities?
Well, what we do at the Miami Gardens Police Department is there's a group of individuals in our internal affairs who check the employment history of the individual that's trying to join the department. There's been quite a few individuals who've tried to come on the department, and for whatever reason, we haven't hired them. It might have been that they've been dismissed from another department. It might have been that if you look at their pattern, there's a pattern of behavior that they've displayed that's made me not hire them, because ultimately the decision is myself and then it goes to the city manager. So there's a lot of different behaviors that we look at, historical things, situations that they may have gone through that may have had us turn them away. But besides that, it's just more of also discussing certain things with other chiefs and finding out the reasons why they were fired, going a little bit more in depth, because sometimes there's things written on a document, but you still want to go and do a little bit more historical as to the reasons why they were hired or fired or not, they're not on that police department currently. So you just have to make sure that you take your time and you do, like I said, an extensive background. And there's a lot of different parameters. We run them through the national database, which is like NCIC, and the Florida database, in order to see if they have any kind of criminal history. So there's a lot of different things that we look for in order to see if this person should be hired on our police department.
I'm sorry, I had a few technical difficulties, but I will share my screen again. So based on information from more than 1.2 million 911 calls in the US, it has been concluded that white officers dispatched to Black neighborhoods fired their guns 5 times as often as Black officers dispatched to similar calls in the neighborhoods. Why is it that officers that don't look like the community are sent to service the community?
So I don't know that, whether it's that the officers don't look like us or they don't know the community. Again, I think that Chief Pratt talked about their hiring practices and how they try to get people of the community. I think the school, Dr. Gallen talked about, everybody can't be from the community, but people respect the community. But I think one of the things that we are missing is the 911 calls, right? What are we calling police officers to do? What are we asking our officers to do just in general? I think back to, I look at things like, you talk about domestic violence, right? Usually that call comes after the domestic violence has already happened, and we almost do nothing to follow up with that, right? So is it really a police officer's job to come and deal with the arguments that a couple is having? And remember, police officers are the only people in local government that we give the ability to use violence to solve problems, right? We don't give that right to anybody else. We don't give that ability to, the social worker. We don't give that ability to the person that's doing the zoning applications. We only give it to a police officer. So a lot of times when we send them to deal with issues that maybe don't require violence, we have to remember that we've sent the person that is given the tool of violence. When we talk about something as simple as the homeless person that's in front of the Walgreens, when we need him to be moved, Walgreens calls the police and makes a 911 call, and we ask the police officer to deal with that, but we give them no resource to deal with that. We don't give them how much. Now here in Dade County, we have the homeless trust, but in other municipalities and other areas, we don't have that type of thing. And what I think we need to think about is, how can we give officers, or possibly give the 911 dispatcher, other options to send to deal with problems that maybe don't exactly require the one person in our government who we give the ability to use violence. If that's the person who we send, how upset can we be when it happens to be the violence happens when that one person is sent out there with all these different things that maybe don't require our officers? I would argue that that's probably where we need to start. We need to focus, and that would possibly reduce the shootings that happen, reduce the use of violence. Well, if we're not putting them in that position, then that probably won't happen.
Well, I understand that. My thought process is still one of, if you are hired, and I'm just using Miami Gardens since we have the chief on who previously worked for Miami-Dade County, but just imagine if you are a white person that don't know anything about the Black community, and you have already been brainwashed, and I call it brainwashed, to believe that there's a fear factor when you're working in the Black community, because I'm the boogeyman. So therefore, and I'm the boogeyman because unfortunately the color of my skin is my sin. And so therefore, when you respond, there's a dangerous combination built up with fear. It causes you to overreact. And so therefore, we have seen, that's why if you look at, the chief can say this, Dr. Gallen, Oscar, all can say, just based upon our years of experience. Why do you think that you don't have those cases where the Black police officer is the one that's shooting the Blacks on innocent contact? Why is that? You know why? Because they know the community. They're not afraid of the community. When they go out there in the community, it's not a fear factor. So the reality, we have to understand that we are placing these individuals, they want the paycheck, it's a good paycheck, but if you are afraid of the community that you are there to serve, protect and serve, until the same treatment that is received in Coral Gables by police officers are the same treatment that are given to Black residents in Miami Gardens, you're gonna have the problem. And the reality of it is they are afraid. And it's a dangerous thing when you got a gun and a badge, but you're afraid of the community that you are entrusted to serve.
So I think, I'm sorry. I think Attorney Hanfield hit on an excellent point when he said the color of our skin is sometimes automatically a sin. I know I'm not a panelist, but I'm just going to mention that I believe that everyone should go online and look up the Harvard test of unrest. It talks about how being just being a person of color or a white person or a black person, that you prefer your own people, so you automatically treat them better. And I think everybody should go online and take that test. And someone mentioned in the comments about, I believe Senator Brannon was mentioning how we're often called, police officers are often dispatched for different things like arguments. And I see in the comments where people are talking about mental health. So how are the officers currently being trained for mental health profession as they go out into the field? Because that's a huge part. They deal with people who are mentally unstable with different chemical imbalances and different other disabilities. How are they trained through mental health to deal with those type of situations?
Well, currently, for our police department, everybody goes through the crisis intervention training, and also they have to be retrained every so often on that training. We also have an individual within the police department who is tasked with making sure that new information that comes about dealing with mentally ill individuals is pushed down to our staff in order for us to be updated on, new laws, new procedures and things of that nature. So we're consistently training in that area because we know that is an area of concern, and we know that we have to treat that population slightly different. So we consistently get trained on that.
Thank you. So our next question, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Our next question, warning, this video contains graphic content and may be upsetting to some people. So this does show police brutality. If you're not comfortable with that, you may want to turn away or mute your devices for a minute.
He's going in ours. It's how he's faithful, Sheila.
I'm sorry if that video was a little disturbing, but that is the reality of the world we live in, unfortunately. So what steps can we take to make reforms to combat police brutality, to combat police violence and systemic racism within law enforcement? And how can we define public safety so that it recognizes the humanity and dignity of every person?
Well,
Go ahead, Larry.
Go ahead.
Well, I think we hit on some of those things as we were talking about it. Look, I really think we have to take a holistic look at how we believe policing should happen in our community. And and look, that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing. When we say systemic anything, it's hard to break any system. You understand? Because people are used to it, right? People have believed that it's done this way a long time for many reasons. And, you know, people will say, and I hear the saying that, you know, we have a few bad apples, but I don't even think that's the case. I don't think that it's that the people are bad. I think that what we're asking them to do and the way we're asking them to do it and the system in which we're asking them to do it is a lot of the problem, right? And what happens is we have good people caught up in a bad system, right? When I saw the SWAT team in Hallandale resign as a result of a decision that the chief made, I mean, look, that's not a few bad apples, right? That's mob mentality, right? That's a system that says that that's how you react to something like that. It's not a war between the community and the police. It's not a war between the people who want to see change in the police department and those that are in the police department. This needs to be a true to live conversation, and a conversation that's going to get uncomfortable at times, right? When you look at things like people, people like, I think you showed a clip of Eric Gardner being choked, right? That was over a loose cigarette, right? That's going to require that's not something that I believe that you should be arresting someone for. I think that that's something that could have received a civil citation. They don't have that program in New York City, right? So the officer is given leniency, and he decides what he's going to do, whether he's going to arrest him, whether he's going to give him a ticket, whether he's just going to talk to him. When we tried to make civil citations something that was required, that every police officer under a certain threshold has to give a civil citation for whatever issue that is, we got pushback politically from the police union that said, you can't, we don't believe that you should do that. And it was a political fight. And you think about something as small as the civil citation bill and how much that changes the amount of people that are arrested. And if you say that, well, we'll create a civil citation program, but we don't require that that the officer has to give it, then it's up to him. And now that bias comes into play. So we have to have a real true to live conversation, and a conversation that's going to offend some people, a conversation that's going to require some people to do things that they don't want to do. And if we don't start that conversation or have that real conversation, we won't see the change that we're talking about.
You know, I'm going to say it again, because I think we have to have a very uncomfortable understanding of the reality of what we're dealing with. Black folks get law and order. White folks get protect and serve. There are examples every single day. You can pass by on the expressway. God knows, just a couple of months ago, the Black physician at Jackson Memorial Hospital was about to be arrested, handcuffed, in front of his house, just unloading some supplies that he was taking to the homeless. But because he was Black and it was a white officer, he didn't see that person as the same. Again, until we can change the fear factor, until we can change that and understand there is a serious dynamic going on, we are placing people to provide police services, law enforcement in the Black community that they either don't respect or fear. And that's why, what I said earlier, all you gotta do is look at, that's how come you can arrest the shooter of the Parkland shooting. And I mean, he done killed up that school, but yet a Black person who haven't done anything because of an innocent in contact is killed. So we got to come to grip. The problem is that until they see that the value of a Black life is the same value as they see a white person, we're going to have these problems. Because when they pull someone over in Coral Gables, ma'am, I hate to pull you over. Can I see your license? Thank you, ma'am. You turns, the wrong way, I'm gonna give you a warning. Have a nice day. The young black man get out the car. They put handcuffs on him. They search the car without their permission. These are things that we see. And then after they go through the car, don't find nothing, give them back the stuff and don't say anything. And so as a result, it leaves a bitter, bad taste in the mouth in the black community. And that's why there's such a distrust of law enforcement in the black community. And the reason being is very simple. We get law and order, white folks get protect and serve. And until we change that narrative, we're gonna have a problem. It's just simple as that. We can't run away from it. It's a problem. And you see it every single day. And we hire these people who are not from the community, who's scared of the community, don't want to be in the community. All they want to do is get a check. And so what you expect, that's how they're going to, their relationship, their encounters are different. And that's what causes innocent conduct, innocent. I mean, even black females are not safe. So that's the reality. So you say, what can we do to change? Well, we have to do a better job in holding them accountable. Because you can't change what's in the heart, but you can legislate accountability. But again, I mean, the reality of it is, I see it. I see it every day. I see as I'm driving past by, you see people on the sidewalk laying on the street. They haven't done anything, they just searching them, and then they say, okay, have a nice day. So this is the reality. This is what goes on in our community. And that's how come we have to come to the understanding to realize that there is a difference in the way police is policing. We get law and order. We don't get protect and serve. And that's the difference. They're getting a different treatment in Miami Beach when they don't look like you and I. They're getting a difference in Coral Gables. But in our community, we place these individuals with a badge and a gun, and they either are afraid, and when I say afraid, that's why the least little thing, you going for the wallet, and they shoot you because they get, all of a sudden, they are afraid, and so they react. And then they say, well, I'm sorry, I thought the person was going for it. That's the reality. They don't have that problem when they pull someone over white who can be the person that just killed 10, 12 people. But because he's white, he see the value as his value.
I 100% agree. And I just want to put it out there that my skin is not a crime. I mean, I think that has to be seen amongst people, that me being a black girl, that doesn't make me a criminal because of my skin color. But I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. And unfortunately, I think we lost the NAACP member, Miss Pierre, but I'm sure that the other representatives in this panel can answer. How can we create a massive yet peaceful call to action from churches of all denominations, local governments, cities, communities, large and small businesses, and community activists to build safer and supportive communities where our people who are brown and black have clear pathways to opportunities as our counterparts?
I'll take a shot at that since I made it back. Thanks for having me back. I was bumped off and couldn't get on, so commend you all. You all have held steady at 100 participants, so you're fully loaded. I think one of the things we have is we have both the benefit of history. History has taught us tremendous lessons about how do we change our current circumstances. And I usually try to deduce them into potentially 4 buckets, 4 strategies. Education, information, organization, and action. Education, information, organization, and action. I think we've talked a lot about the protesting. I think that speaks to organization, but action. So if you look throughout history, this is not a new narrative. This is not a new journey. Our history has placed us up against systems of denial, systems of destruction, systems of division, predicated on a system of racism. And through education, through organization, and through action, we were able to break some of those systems that were predicated on racism. What systems did we break? We broke a system of segregated schools. Yes, we continue to have problems throughout this community, throughout this country, but the nation had a system that had Black children learning in certain schools and white children learning in others. That was the system that was in place, that was part of an organized structure. We ran up against a system relative to our inability to vote. The systems prevented us from voting. It was, whether it was tests, whether it was blocking the voting booth, whatever it was. These were systems that were put into place and supported by the government in many cases. And we, through education, information, organization, and action, we were able to break those systems. When it comes to women's rights, we were able to break those systems. So we have a formula for breaking systems of division, systems of destruction, in this particular case, systems of death, and predicated on a system of racism. But again, it's going to take us to continue to educate everyone, continue to provide information to everyone, continue to organize, and continue to act. And I want to wrap up by saying, as I said previously, the challenge and the opportunity to transition and transform the conditions for Black folk is not going to come squarely on the shoulders of Black folk. And I will say this, every skin folk ain't kin folk. And yes, we have white cops that are not good cops, and we have Black cops that are not good cops. So racism and some of the injustices that we face come across the board. And I have to say that as an educator, because some of the best teachers that inspired me were not always Black teachers. They were white teachers that gave me some sense of hope and optimism. So we have to be able to put our shoulder to the wheel of work with people who have the same head, but as Larry Hanfield said earlier, the righteous heart, in terms of understanding that we have a common bond in humanity, but we don't have the luxury of hiding who we are because of the color of the skin we wear.
Thank you, thank you. And in closing, we only have about less than 10 minutes left, but I couldn't continue going on with this panel without asking one question about the education system that I am in, that my brother and sister are in. So I'm not going to be able to play the video, but I can ask the question. Disparities in educational attainment among population groups have characterized the United States throughout its history. Education is sometimes characterized as the great equalizer, but to date, the country has not found ways to successfully address the adverse effects of socioeconomic circumstances, prejudice, and discrimination that suppress performance for some groups. Disparities in educational opportunities throughout people's lives. Thus, it is critical to ensure that all students receive comprehensive support that level the playing field in order to improve the well-being of underrepresented individuals in the nations. How can we ensure that the pursuit of equity encompasses both the goals to which the nation aspires for its children and its mechanisms to attain these goals? Because we are short on time, I'm going to ask the panelists to keep their answers short to about 1 minute, and you have the floor.
Let me say what I have to say because I'm going to have to leave. Following up with what Dr. Gallen said, educate, agitate, vote. Al Gore lost by a mere 527 votes, and history could have been changed forevermore. That's how Bush II became appointed president by the Supreme Court. 527 votes. Everything we talked about, the only way you can bring about a change, let's agitate, educate, and then vote. Thank you all so much. I take my hat off to the young generation. You give us hope, and therefore, because we have hope, we can look forward to tomorrow. Thank you so much.
I think to your question about education, I'll keep it to about 55 seconds as a lifelong educator. The challenges that we have, the historical challenges that we have in education are really a manifestation of what challenges we have in the community. School systems in some cases are built on disparities, But what we have very often are disparities that reflect in families and in communities, socioeconomic challenges, community challenges, family challenges, and very often they manifest themselves in the schools. So what we have to do is start to improve our communities, improve our families, educate our families, and create a structure in which we demand equal opportunity, equitable opportunities for our children in all of our schools and all of our classrooms across this community and across this nation. So again, we change our schools by starting with changing our families and our communities, and we're working against a very challenging system outside of the schools.
Thank you, Dr. Gallen. In closing, I'd like to personally thank each participant on this panel this evening for taking the time out to have a conversation with me and the community. To all of you that have logged on and hung in there through technical difficulties, I truly appreciate you. This discussion is so very important for not just the young people, but for us all. My takeaway tonight is that we must educate ourselves so that we have a voice in change. Policy changes made through elected local officials speaking up for the people for change. We must vote for change. We must let our voice be heard through our privilege of voting. My challenge to all is to understand that we are chosen and called to respond with grace and with love, but not evil. Fight back with your voice at the voting polls during elections. We must be radical but not harmful. We must be peaceful and powerfully intelligent but not passive. We must be our brothers and sisters keepers. We must take pride, love, passion, hard work, and change the world. I challenge you to flood the polls. Flood your state elections sites to register to vote. We were created in a time such as this. Lift every voice and sing. Thank you so much for everyone who joined. It is much appreciated. And there is not enough time in the world to talk about the things that we face as a community. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to go to the chat box, but this conversation is just so deep. And I thank everybody for joining throughout the technical difficulties and everything that happened. So thank you so much. It can't be expressed how thankful I am for all the polls and all the people who helped me every step of the way, because I definitely couldn't have done this alone. So thank you so much. And I'm going to ask Pastor Burden to close us out in a word of prayer, because what can we do without the word of the Lord?
Let us pray. Our Father and our God, we thank you once again for this panel. We pray that all that was said and done will find a lodging place in our hearts, and that we will educate, we will agitate, and Lord, at the end, we will vote to make a change. We ask that you bless each individual on the phone, show them favor, and as we move to demand a change, we'll be a part of it. Bless us now as we go our separate ways. We ask this in Jesus' name. We do pray. Amen and amen and amen.
Amen, amen. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope that this has inspired a change and ignited a fire in your soul. So I challenge you all to go out and vote and make a change in the communities in which you live. Go out to local, county, state, all the elections, because your vote can change the world. Not only voting, but let your voice be heard among our educational system, our judicial system, our law enforcement. Be the change you want to see. I can't enforce that enough. But like I said, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for making my dreams come true. So I would like to thank the panelists, especially thank everyone. You guys definitely kept this thing capped out at 100. People were texting me, I can't get in, there's too many people in. So thank you so very much. And I hope to have a further conversation someday to continue this, because this little hour and a half that we didn't get to reach because of technical difficulties just wasn't enough to get this all through. To contact me, you can follow me on Instagram at melodic.m, melodic.m, and I will be available. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Excellent.
Great
Good
job.
job.
Great
Good
job.
Thank you.
Great
Maya,
job.
Maya,
Love you and be blessed.
Maya for
Great
president.
job, Mia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, Mia.
Very good job, Mia. Very good job.
Awesome. Yes, Mia. Great job. Great job, Mia. Good job. Thank you so much.
All right, Tornado.
Yeah, Yes, that's right. I am a tornado for life. Booker
You
T.
made Auntie cry. Oh, your auntie
Throw
proud.
it in there. Your principal's just as proud of you.
Oh,
Mm.
and you
All
teach too.
We need to make sure every member of Bethany is registered and voted and a voting member. Every
Yes.
member. This Saturday, I will get to the pulpit and I will demand all members to register or vote. We're going to disfellowship them, or we're going to agitate them and irritate them till they go to the poll. That's right. From the pulpit, we got to take over. The church got to come back to the forefront.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And
Way to
I'm
go,
going to
Mia.
end this
Way
meeting
to
out.
go.
Thank you. I'm going to end this meeting out. And once again, thank you so much for everyone who joined and stayed on and listened and is ignited to go make the change. Thank you again.
All right.
Thank you.
Keep hope alive.
Great job. Great job.
Excellent. Proud of you, Mia.
Okay.